Hello, friends, gents, and ladies. I'm here to present you the video on a book summary of I Too Had a Dream, which is an autobiography of Dr. Verghese Kurein, better known as the milkman of India. He was a person who was associated with what is called as the Dairy Revolution or the Operation Flood, or you may call it as the White Revolution in India. He was managing a magnum opus operation of something what is called as Amul today. Yes, Amul, which is better known as the taste of India. And the revenue today for Amul spans up to almost 385 billions. Yes, I spelled that right. It's 385.5 billion Indian rupees. So that was the level of operations, or that is the level of operations which currently Amul does. And I'm sure each and every household in India knows what Amul is today, especially for the mother, for the children, when they drink the Amul milk, or we have the utterly butterly delicious butter in our meals when we apply it to our tasty sandwiches or whatever you call it. Yes, today I will be doing a small summary of the book I Too Had a Dream, on an autobiography of Dr. Verghese Kurein. This book was told to Gaudi Salvi, who is also a journalist. So just share my screen with you. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a book summary. Like I said, I Too Had a Dream, autobiography of the milkman of India, Dr. Verghese Kurein. And first, let me take you to some statistics. Let me interest you by telling that the operations of Amul in 2011 used to clock around 97.74 billion INR, and today, standing in 2020, we have 385.5 billion Indian rupees of operations happening today. And let me tell you the statistics when it actually started. It started in 1953-54. At that point in time, the turnover of Amul was just 55.47 lakhs. If you take it into billions, it will be something around 0.0054, something like that. So you can just understand the level of operations which Dr. Verghese Kurein did. Now, so this book is takes you to the story of how a sleepy and dusty little town transformed itself into the milk capital of India. Yes, I'm talking about Anand, which is a small district in Gujarat where the whole revolution started. And first, let me take you to the early days of Dr. Verghese Kurein. In his early days, Dr. Kurien was an engineer. He wanted to be an engineer. He was an athlete, a prized athlete, and then he had huge interest in nuclear physics and metallurgy. Yes, he wanted to be an engineer who wanted to pursue his further studies into metallurgy, into physics, and then become an engineer into a leading corporate. So when I talk about corporates, In those days, the corporates used to be Tatas, the Birlas, yes. And Dr. Verghese Kurein was from a well-owned family. His father was a civil surgeon in Cochin, and his mother was a very, very learned person who played piano. Later in his life, Dr. Kurien went to UK to pursue his further studies with Institute of Michigan. Beg your pardon, it is Michigan State University in the US, where he earned his degree in metallurgy and nuclear physics. Now, he began his career in dairying at the government's creamery in Anand, Gujarat, and later joining the Kayara District Cooperative Milk Producers Union Limited, which is called Amul today. Yes. Dr. Kurien, who initially came back to India after his further studies in US, he had a dream to be a leading engineer in Jamshedpur plant of the Tatas, but he did not want to take that job because that job he got from, or maybe by the reference of his uncle, who was the then finance minister of Free India. So, not to take any offerings from the relatives, Dr. Kurien resigned from the job and then moved back to Bombay. He moved back to the Bombay with a point to do any blue collar job, any white collar job, sorry, with any of the leading corporates in India. So several incidents in the book validate Dr. Kurien's point that with every challenge comes an opportunity. He also points out that how cooperative model has been tailor-made for dairy sector. So in those days, when Dr. Kurien came back to India with his dream to join the Tatas, the Birlas, he was commissioned as a research analyst to Anand, on which he got very, very apprehensive that he is a metallurgical engineer who has got his degree from the US, but why he is commissioned to Anand. Anand was a very dusty and a small town in Gujarat. He went back to the government authorities, but government told him that they have paid 30,000 rupees at that point in time for his further studies with the US colleges. So he had two options. Either he repays the debt back to government, or he continues to be the government officer or work as a research analyst under the bureaucracy of what we know is the current bureaucratic structure in India. In his stint with Anand, he got so frustrated and irritated that he left his job and he resigned to the government, stating he cannot continue anymore with the government authorities. Which is when he met Tribhuvandas Patel, who was the head of the Cooperative Society of the Kayara district, also known as Anand. The idea of cooperative was of Sardar Vallabhai Patel, who appointed Morarji Desai, his deputy, to help and form the cooperative, in which Dr. Morarji Desai ultimately appointed Tribhuvandas as the head of the cooperative society. During those days, there used to be someone called as Paulson. Paulson was a dairy manufacturer which was held by another businessman uh, who was operating from Gujarat and Bombay. He was actually utilizing the farmers, or maybe the milk farmers in Gujarat, he used to charge them exploitative prices and then sell this milk produce to the Bombay Cooperative Society. It was not Bombay Cooperative Society, but it was called as a Bombay Milk Scheme. There was continuous threat from Mr. Paulson in respect of unhealthy competition, dispute over division of operational area, etc. Mr. Kurien was absolutely against imported dairy products as he wanted to make India self-sufficient in dairy products with the empowerment of farmers in a democratic way. In doing so, he received generous help from many ministers like Krishnamachari, Dr. Subramaniam. Being impressed upon Kurien's model and tangible benefit, Mr. Krishnamachari, then Commerce Minister, Kurien's model and tangible benefit, he ordered to cut down import of butter to protect Indian dairy industry and at the same time healed the chronic problem of shortage of foreign exchange reserve. Value for money is the message of Amul for its customer. Despite other market players' scrupulous way to market products produced with undesirable ingredient formula, Amul always stuck to quality norms and succeeded to withstand threat from its rival. What Mr. Kurien thought that Amul is beyond just milk products. So therefore, he forayed into further areas of doing milk products, making milk powder, and then entering into the dairy products or the baby products as well. If you know today what we call as the Dhara refined oil, the name was coined by milkman himself because at that point in time when the model of Amul was a success, government came to Mr. Kurien to do the marketing of oil as well. Therefore, he called Dhara as what is called Dhara today, which means ever flowing river. And he was the person behind the coining of the name Amul as well, which was called Amulya. Mr. Kurien set up a new cattle feed compounding factory as well, which is sponsored by Oxfam at Kanjari, which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri on the occasion of Sardar Patel's birth anniversary. The Prime Minister visited the villages of Anand. He also visited the Cooperative Society and then stayed at Dr. Kurien's house. Shastriji was overwhelmed by the success of the dairy and also wanted Dr. Kurien to replicate the same across India, which Dr. Kurien actually wanted, but he could not do it with much success because he did not get the fund from the government. Therefore, Dr. Kurien went back to the cooperative of Anand, requested money from them, and he was the person who tried and set up the dairies all across India. And then comes the Operation Flood, which he set up along with H.M. Dalia and Michael Hales, who were the pioneers of the project, and it was referred to as the billion-litre idea. Dr. Kurien also took multiple aids from the World Food Programme and from the UNICEF. He used those funds to actually flood the operations flood with money and then setting of cooperative societies at an all India level, which is where the Indian government nominated him as the chairman of NDDB. And in July 1970, the billion-litre idea was officially launched. Marketing was a concern and therefore was the procurement as well. So therefore, the system of cooperative was set up and it was a complete decentralized setup in which the farmers were the owners of the cooperative and Mr. Kurien always worked as the managers of the farmers. You won't believe Mr. Kurien used to draw just 5,000 rupees as his monthly salary, wherein his friends, whom he actually studied with, used to draw something around 60,000. Mr. Kurien was always an Indian first. Before even thinking of any foreign products, he always used to question himself that why can't this product be made in India? And he was one of the pioneers in making milk powder from the milk of buffalo. So while replicating the Anand pattern for oil seeds, which I said Dhara, he got a funding of 700 crores from the government of India to reduce the import of vegetable oil and start manufacturing vegetable oils in India, which was again a success. After Operation Flood, Mr. Verghese Kurein got to visit many countries, especially the countries which were developing like India. All these countries wanted that Dr. Kurien should do something for them as well, as he had done in India. During these visits, he met many interesting people with whom his experiences have been shared. One such personality was Mr. Alexei Kosygin, Soviet premier, who remarked that Dr. Kurien's work had taken a long time ago and failed to bring revolution in other dimensions such as cotton, other agricultural products. Dr. Kurien was invited for many state visits, whether it is Russia, you call it Sri Lanka, and whatnot. And to mention it, he visited Pakistan as well. So success is the sum total learning from failures is what Dr. Kurien used to say. He was also appointed as the chairman of the Gujarat Electricity Board, where he ultimately resigned because of the bureaucratic problems which were prevalent in the electric power units. He wanted to make them cooperative as well, but that idea was not implemented because of the lying bureaucracy in India. Dr. Kurien ends the chapter with anecdotes showing a glimpse about his lifelong beliefs and ideals which shaped him, people around him, and also the organizations which he has associated with, such as the Institute of Rural Management, Anand. He was also appointed as a professor in Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, at that point in time. So he ends the book with his dream about cooperatives and his love for fellow men and women, which he attributes as the greatest source of inspiration. The realization that this book gives me is Dr. Kurien was the accidental milkman of India because he did not have interest in dairy, but it was all fate which landed Dr. Kurien in Anand. He met Tribhuvandas Patel, and today he is known as the milkman of India. So today India needs more and more of Dr. Kuriens who actually want to pursue a career in dairy. Dr. Kurien had vast fortunes in being related to the finance minister of India, later whose son became to head the IIM Ahmedabad. His name was Ravi. And then Dr. Kurien was the representative, or he was the manager of what is called as Amul. He was appointed as the chairman of Gujarat Cooperative Milk Federation, Gujarat State Electricity Board, and he was the vice chancellor of the Gujarat Agricultural University. Dr. Kurien was made the manager when he was just 28 years. So you can just understand the aura of Dr. Kurien. He remained as the chairman of National Dairy Development Board for 33 years, being appointed for 11 terms in a row every 3 years, and got the board to a height with a corpus of 3,000 crores. So such is the story of Dr. Kurien. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan, he was awarded the Padma Shri, and he was awarded the Padma Vibhushan, which is the nation's second highest civilian award. He always used to say that I am first and foremost an Indian. Like I said, he used to draw a salary of rupees 5,000 when he was the chairman and the general manager of the Gujarat Cooperative Milk Federation. When he resigned as the post of the chairman, he resigned from all the luxuries which were given to him from the cooperative. He did not even use the car of the dairy when he actually resigned and gave it to the person who was actually heading the dairy then. So let me just give you some glimpse of the numbers. Milk production in India has grown at a healthy clip of 4.8% during the last 20 years, and India is now the largest milk producer in the world. Today, milk availability per capita is 214 gram per day, exactly double the figure of 1970 when the Operation Flood was launched. About 66% of rural households and 90% of the urban households consume milk today. On an average, 50% of milk production is retained in our rural areas for consumption. The per capita household consumption of milk has increased by 23% and 15% in rural and urban areas, respectively between 1987-88 and 1993-1994. He always used to believe in production by masses and not in the concept of mass production. So such was the vision of Dr. Kurien. And rightly so, he has said in his book, I'll just read it for you. Yet, if there is one conviction I hold as firmly today as I did 50 years ago, and if there is one reason why I must remain optimistic about our nation's future, it is because I have seen over and over again that when the tools of development are placed in the hands of our rural people, and when their energy and wisdom is linked with the skill of committed professionals, there is nothing they cannot achieve. So he always believed in giving the powers to the people who actually should own the powers and not into the hands of the bureaucrats. He was totally against the culture of bureaucrats. He used to tell, we can feed ourselves, which is a great achievement. However, we cannot fool ourselves. Currently, he said that the current ownership of building the future of India is into the hand of young Turks. And he finishes the books by telling, our dreams were enormous, our mission mighty, but we moved forward gradually, step by step. We knew we must begin by building a small, strong foundation towards change. We knew that the first foundation we built must be our very own. For as Gandhiji said, be the change you want to see. So he concludes the book by telling sunset and evening star and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning at the bar when I put out to sea. Thank you.